Okay, what was that? God got amen and applause for being huge. We got nervous laughter for us being really, really small. That means a lot more when it comes right after the phrase. But I'll give partial credit for that. If you want to get a glimpse of it, here's a composite shot of our subdivision. The Milky Way galaxy is taken by combining hundreds of thousands of photographs. Obviously, we haven't managed to get outside of the Milky Way galaxy to take a picture of it, but NASA folks are pretty sure that's what it looks like. It has a barred nucleus. It's a barred spiral galaxy. And you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's 100,000 light years across. So if you want to go visit your neighbors on the other side of the subdivision, you just have to go 186,000 miles a second for 100,000 years, and boom, you're at their house. In our little neighborhood home called the Milky Way Galaxy. You say, well, where are we? I'm looking for us on there. You know, we got to be right in the center, obviously. I'm sure we're right there in that middle. No, believe it or not, we're not even in the center of our own subdivision, okay? So affirming again tonight, it's not about you and it's not about me. We don't even live in the center of our own subdivision. And you don't want to live in the center of the subdivision because it's scary in the center of the subdivision. You say, well, where do we live? Well, we live way out between a couple of the spiral arms. You don't want to live in there either because that's dangerous territory inside the bands. We live in that little clear zone between a couple of the bands, about 2/3 of the way out. We're living somewhere about there. And you're like, well, I don't see me. No. Because we couldn't put a mark on the diagram that you could see that would be the right relative size to our solar system. You know, that's our little cul-de-sac in the subdivision, that we couldn't even put our solar system on here in relative size to the Milky Way galaxy for you to see. It's that small inside the Milky Way galaxy. Scientists say our solar system is the size of a quarter, and the Milky Way galaxy is the size of the North American continent. So our whole solar system is a quarter in the size of an area as big as the North American continent. We're not that consequential in our own subdivision called the Milky Way galaxy. And somewhere in there is a star, one of these billions of stars. It's not the biggest, the baddest, the brightest. It's just one of the stars of the billions of stars. We call it the sun, and around it tonight are orbiting these balls, one of which is called Earth. It's our home. That's you and me. This particular image came from Apollo 17. There was a day, for those of you who are my age and older, you remember when we were smart enough to get off the planet for the first time. Let's hear it for old people. Some of you young people are like, oh yeah, that's the Earth, I've seen that. But the first time we saw it, it was like, oh wow. And we looked back at ourselves, it was stunning. And what you see particularly in this image, you see Africa, if you know your geography well. You see the very tip of southern Africa down about middle of the earth with a wisp of cloud coming over the Cape of Good Hope. You see the Sahara Desert and barren across the top left, Sinai Peninsula to the top right, and just the tip edge there, you see the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, just up at the very top left edge. But what's amazing about the picture is that you don't see any countries or any cities or any people. You don't see the great need that is there. You don't see the poverty and the strife and the pain. You don't see the glory and the glamour. You don't see anybody's yard or anybody's car. And as you step back, you just begin to get this feeling that maybe we're not so big after all. I mean, we know the one who made this world must be enormous. But all of a sudden we get this feeling that maybe the fall tricked us and maybe we're not quite as important as we thought we were. Or maybe our lives aren't quite as grand as we made them out to be. I love this quote. It's from Neil Armstrong, the first man who walked on the moon. he grabs this thought when he says, I remember on the way home on Apollo 11, it suddenly struck me that tiny pea, pretty and blue, was the earth. I put my thumb up and shut one eye, and my thumb blotted out planet Earth. But listen to his conclusion. He said, but I didn't feel like a giant. I felt very, very small. I think the psalmist got it right when he said, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you care for him? In 1977, we launched a spacecraft called Voyager on a one-way mission to take images of the planets and our own solar system. And 13 years later, Valentine's Day 1990, scientists from the JPL sent a message to Voyager and said, before you go any further, turn around and take one last panoramic snapshot of all the planets you visited. By now, Voyager is 3.7 billion miles away from the Earth. It's traveling 40,000 miles an hour away from the sun. And it turns around and takes a series of photographs. Obviously, you can't get one wide-angle shot of Uranus and Neptune and Saturn and the planets that it's visited, so it takes a succession of 60 images. And it starts to send the images back to Earth. Each image, 640,000 pixels in every one of the 60 images. You say, what's a pixel? It's that little tiny dot that makes up a photograph. And 3.7 billion miles away, the pixels are taking 5.5 hours each to make it back to the Earth. 60 images, 640,000 pixels in each image, 5.5 hours for each pixel to make it back to the Earth. And you think you have dial-up problems at the house, okay? That is a massive dial-up problem. And it takes months for the image to come back. And when it does, it absolutely stuns astronomy. Very famous picture, floored me the first time I saw it. The image that came to us, once it was put in a composite form from 3.7 billion miles away, famous image called the pale blue dot. You're like, excuse me, did I miss something? We waited several months to get that back. Those are the ones I throw away at the Walmart. You know, you go through at the back and you're like, oh no, I had my thumb over the lens on that one. No good, no good. Can I get my money back on these? No. You say, well, what are the green and the pink bands in the image? They're rays of sunlight reflecting off Voyager, because sun, even though nearly 4 billion miles away, was in view. And it just so happened that suspended in one of the beams of sunlight was a tiny little speck. Do you see it? Yeah, for you guys in the cheap seats, I'll blow it up just a tad for you. It's there. If you're still not with me, it's right there. I don't want anyone to miss it. And we can just go back to the big shot for a second. It's a picture of Earth from 3.7 billion miles away. And it just so happened to be caught in a ray of light. And one famous astronomer of the day said of it, just remarking that everyone who's ever lived their lives lived them out on that tiny pale blue dot that he called a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. And I don't know about you, when I first saw it, a shrinking feeling came over me. And I knew in that moment that my life was a tiny little blip on the radar of history, a vapor, infinitesimal little life. You say, well, Louie, you're making me feel small. No, I'm not trying to make you feel small. I'm trying to help you see that you are small.